All right, everybody. It is Tuesday, April 23rd, 7 p.m. here on East Coast time, and it is open mic time. I apologize for not being here last week. Schedule conflicts are just going to be abound, especially as I'm approaching the wedding season coming up. I always try to make sure that my client meetings, I try to keep them manageable, but I definitely have a lot of clients that, tend to be a little bit later at night. They have jobs, they have things that they have to do. So, a lot of times I'm, working around those schedules as best as possible. But so thanks for joining. Again, if you can't always catch this on video, check out the podcast as well. It's up on iTunes, it's up on Spotify, all your major sources for those streams. And hopefully, I want to try to get this stream a little bit more, hopefully peppy. I haven't seen as many Q&As as I had hoped. So naturally, if you have any questions, comments on anything that I've posted in the past week or two, make sure you post it on them. I always find it's good topics to kind of, just flush out in the open. First things first, something completely, hey Howie, how you doing? Something completely unrelated to DJing or anything. Avengers Endgame is in 48 hours. Fair warning to all those who would want to spoil anything like that. People like me will hunt you down. We've been waiting way too long for a moment like this. So anybody again ready to watch Avengers Endgame, you know what you need to do and kind of put yourself on social silence for a little bit so you don't get spoiled. I know I'm not going to be talking about it for at least a few days. I don't want to trip anything out there and offend anybody because I know I would just be devastated knowing some things. All that being said, I posted up my article finally. I spent 4 takes, somewhere like 3 weeks, and numerous, autofocus issues, corrupted audio, me losing my voice, bad lighting, the table saws in the background. There were so many things that I had to contend with putting together my ceremony and reception video, but I did finally get that out. Got it chopped up to the best as I can. As anybody should be able to tell, it's 2 different days of footage that's there. Actually, in the middle too, I had to do a voiceover. I tried to do the best that I could on that one. But that was one of my corrupted audio pieces I had to contend with, but it was my only transition that I had. So I really hope that you enjoyed it. I got some really good feedback behind it. One of the interesting questions that got thrown out there was, what is the purpose of the IEM? And I wanted to dive in just a little bit more on why an IEM, versus some of the other solutions out there. So some years ago, when I started getting more and more cocktails and some ceremonies, I decided that I needed some type of broadcast capability. Having my speaker always near me wasn't always the most logical placement for that to be there. And, especially when you start getting into cocktail and whatnot, usually the systems are so far separated. Running XLR is usually a real pain, if at all even possible. So I initially invested in the Alto Stealth Wireless. And for those that don't know, it's usually, I think it's like about $400. It used to operate on the 600 megahertz band. Now they got 500 megahertz models that are out there. Thank you, Howie. Yeah, my wire management, I agree. Um, and everybody joke, I'm meticulous with my wire management. I'm OCD, if you can't even tell from my equipment over here. I've been testing some stuff, and I'm really meticulous with my writing. Well, with my wire management. But anyways, back to IEMs and with the Alta Stealth Wireless that I had, and it worked. It was fair. I would say the first couple weddings, it took me a little while to get it dialed into. It definitely almost always had to be unobstructed. There was no way there could have been anything near or around it, and it would cause issues. And even then, it was a crapshoot. There were some times I got some tremendous performance out of it. Other times, it was clear line of sight and still had problems. I believe it has like 16 channels you can sort through. You can't scan it or anything like that. And the two biggest negatives of, and it's really almost anything in the same price bracket. I know Rhodes got their solution as well, as around the same price. And one is limited range because the power output is fairly small. It's usually 10 milliwatts or under. and it just it can't penetrate through a lot, not at that kind of output. And then combine that with, at least I'm not 100% sure about the Rode, but I know with the Alto Stealth Wireless that its frequency range that it can go through, I think caps is somewhere around like 80 or 100. It might even be slightly higher. You're losing a bit of the lows, and the highs. Again, I can't. I'm going completely off memory on this, but I believe it was like 12,000 kilohertz, maybe 14,000 kilohertz. But you were definitely losing some of the top end as well. And you could definitely tell when I finally did a comparison when I got my true IEMs in that there was something lagging. Now, with the Sennheiser G3 IEM that I purchased, that isn't a full spectrum either. It's not 20 hertz all the way up to 20 kilohertz, but it's very close. It definitely encompasses more of that frequency range. But more importantly, it also transmits up to 30 milliwatts. And so that gives you a lot more range to be able to go with. I have yet to run into a situation where I could not reach where I was trying to go through. Now, there is one venue that I have to deal with. Matter of fact, my next wedding that I'm going to in next Thursday happens to be this one where there's some EMF going on right dab in the middle between where I'm shooting over to the deck area where I put the speaker out there. And sometimes I can kind of finagle it. I got through it the last time I was there, but it is a bit of a challenge. But I can do it. With the Alto Stealth Wireless, forget about it. I couldn't even get nowhere close to the range that I needed to get through that and out to the deck. So the IEM is definitely much more expensive. You're talking a big change from $400 all the way up now to $1,000 with a single receiver. And I personally recommend getting the two receivers out of it. It's a $1,300 kit at that point, and you're saving $200 because each receiver is $500. So not cheap. I lost one in the process. As I mentioned in the video, is one of the reasons why I'm keeping everything in my pseudo Pelican case. That way there's a cutout for it. I know what's going into it. But more importantly, now I have the capability to really broadcast virtually anywhere. I never really run into a situation where I have to go more than hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet. But I have transmitted that far in some cases. I went clear across a lake at one point. I think I measured it at 275 feet, and I still had clear reception out of it. Now, granted, that is as clear as reception as you can get out of it, but still, it worked quite well. I never had a single dropout of it. It's just been rock solid. And for me, being in a industry that I consider critical, a couple does not want to hear, fade outs. They don't want to hear, dropouts of any sorts, and these just stand up. Now, they're not 100% perfect. If you don't align the antennas right, sometimes you will get some interference. If you have, your base antennas not properly aligned, that you could catch some interference out of as well. Those are just anomalies you'll never get past if you don't have proper placement of it. But with proper placement, short of the extremes, going with something like the Sennheiser IEM, I know Shure has their own brands as well, and there's actually even models out there that cost even more. But I just don't see the necessity for it. The output wattage, from what I've seen out there, there's still around like 30 millivolts, 30 milliwatts going out. So I don't think there'd be a clear advantage going to an even more expensive unit. Ben Stowe might be able to chime in someday on something like that for like the extreme, just super high end. You can never, ever, ever go wrong ever. And maybe there's something better in that range. But pound for pound, the IEM, while not inexpensive, has been an incredible investment for me. Matter of fact, I have two now. I have one in my ceremony rig. I have one in my reception rig. And now if I ever have to swap one out, if I have something that dies, I just take my whole digital mixer box, throw that out, grab my other one, and I'm ready to go with the exact same capabilities. So I can't stress how much the IEM has freed me to do things that I need to do. Putting speakers exactly where I need to. I can transport those speakers, and again, I use the Maui 5 Go's for ceremony, cocktail, sometimes dinner, and even dance film. And I can just literally, with IEM attached to it, pick it up, walk, where I need to go to in the next step, and boom, it's done. It's been an incredible investment. Yeah, and Howie's actually mentioning in his chat for those who are on the podcast that he didn't get good luck with the Alto system in his area as well. Now, I have heard people that have had just nothing but good luck with it, and that's great. I know I, again, had fair luck with it. I didn't have dropouts every time, but just knowing that there was always a possibility of one dropout always made me think, okay, can I rely on this? Can I trust on it? And the answer was no. And the fact that there were better solutions out there that, while again, not inexpensive, was worth the cost, in my opinion. So highly stress IEM, check out my video on IEMs, also my ceremony reception video that I published today. I speak a bit on that as well. Another thing that somebody brought up that I wish I would have thrown in the video a little bit more was sandbags for the Maui 5 Gos. So for those that don't know, the Maui 5 Go, they are a battery operated column array, similar to like the EV50 behind me, if I can actually ever get my direction right. It's been a great little speaker. The battery life is tremendous in it. I've had it last from pre-ceremony all the way past the last song. And it's been great. But the one gotcha that I've run into over time is with super windy conditions, they tend to wobble a bit. And I actually had one fall over twice. Really gusty day in Connecticut on a shore, just super breezy wedding. I couldn't even put my Countryman over the ear microphone on the officiant. I had to go with a stand mic just to cut through the wind. But those kept falling off. And I actually had a videographer who kindly allowed me to borrow their sandbags. I just simply placed it over the top of the sub, and it was enough to keep it in balance. Now, he had mentioned, he wished that the LD systems would create maybe like a larger plate to kind of keep it more stabilized. And I think that's a pretty good idea, but I think there's a problem with the design. Actually, I haven't even checked it since I've been home. I just recently got home. But I think the entire bottom is pretty smooth, and there wouldn't be anything really to latch onto it. So you'd have to do some type of bungee system or something to kind of keep things together. But placing them over the top, I didn't have problems with them really sliding off or anything. It kept it well in place. The wind definitely did not let up that day in Connecticut, and they stayed intact. All that being said, the Maui 5s actually stayed, they didn't break. I had a little bit of cosmetic scuff on it from it falling into the dirt and hit a rock, but is still working perfectly. And I think stands to the test that, they can take some abuse and still come out on top. I'm just right now reading how he also said he went to an IEM system with half-wave antennas, works like a champ. Half wave. I still even use the quarter waves. I didn't notice too much of a performance gain at all. And generally, you don't really get a performance gain out of it. You're just, either increasing the area for the antenna to be able to pick up, or if you're using something like a directional, like a diversity fin antenna, now you're focusing it and keeping things a little bit more on the XY axis, and kind of drowning out some of the noise that could be happening elsewhere. But the IEMs, again, I can't stress how well they have worked over the years I've had them now. And to top that off, marrying that up with the Maui 5 Gos, and I said this in the video, but I'll keep on stressing, also having the UPS with my ceremony system, which right now over here is the two top units that's over here, has been, it is leaps and bounds the best solution that I can provide my couples. Between the amount of mics I can offer, speaker placement, the ability to not have to worry about power, the ability to mic up the officiant with my Countryman to keep it really diminutive and not in photos as often as I can. Again, every now and then you have to use a stick mic if the conditions just do not allow. But every other wedding that I've done has worked tremendous. Again, having my Soundcraft UI16, being able to control things from my iPad, so I don't have to be right behind my gear. Typically, I put my gear way off to the side, usually out of eye shot, unless I've mixing in a live band and they have to be relatively close, unless I can use one of my packs on them. But otherwise, I usually have that out of earshot. Usually the speakers are up front, nice and center with no issues. With blocking view or anything like that. Part of the reasons I went with the Mauis is they're very slick looking, very elegant looking. I've never had a couple complain about it. I've actually, when I first got them, I even notified the clients that I could put these on the sides, I could put them up front, and they're like, whatever sounds best. And that was the consistent message that I got. So for those worried about having something up front, don't worry about that. If you have a really slick solution that's not going to be in the way or anything like that, your clients will completely understand and actually would probably prefer things to sound right and still look really good, as opposed to putting a chunky cab on a pole up front. That would be not necessarily the greatest thing to do. But if you have something very diminutive that sounds good, that you're not going to have wires that people have to worry about, those are the solutions that clients want to see, because now they're like, oh, this sounds great and we don't have to worry about anything being in the way. All that has contributed to me to allow me to have really, really premium ceremony services. I think that, class leading, basically, there aren't too many others out there who don't have some part of this setup that aren't doing the same thing. If you have an IAM, if you have battery powered, I know Sennheiser has it's still a cab style, but you can put the microphones in the back, fairly expensive, but a really slick all-in-one setup. But you are relegated to being behind the speaker at all time, and you have to mix. And I am consistently mixing my couples when they're doing their vows. A lot of times I'll come off the officiant's microphone, and then when I come up to whether they're saying their own vows or just repeating, I'll be raising gain, lowering gain to pick up their voices better, and knowing where my threshold is so I don't catch feedback. And if you're behind something and you're out of communication with somebody, that you can only do one thing at one time. So that's one thing I really liked being with my iPad with the Soundcraft UI16. Has given me a lot of freedom to do things that there's just no other way that I could do it otherwise. Well, we're coming up on 17 minutes now into the video. I think I'll cut it here at this point. Thanks for chiming in, everybody, especially you, Howie. Always can count on you to comment up, and truly appreciate it. For those catching the replay, but by all means, still comment on it if you have any questions or anything like that. Check out my video that and post that I put up today on my ceremony and reception systems. And actually, if you have any questions about that, reach out to me. If you enjoy videos, not only the open mic series, but anything that I'm posting up there, make sure you hit that subscribe button, click that notification bell. Something will change someday in the future, and do that if you can. And if you really do love this content, head over to my Patreon page and subscribe. It's only $1 a month. That really helps out, because doing all this definitely takes time and effort, having to buy equipment and tweak everything out just to get these videos out, especially this video that I just published. Four long shoots, losing my voice and all that. It takes time. It takes effort. And for those that do put videos out there, the stress that you go through trying to get all this content out there. I hope you've enjoyed this. I will see you again in a week. Take care, everybody.